The historical actions of Leonidas of Sparta and his 300 warriors at Thermopylae are the foundation of the legendary Spartan superhero, a figure embodying supreme discipline, resilience, and unwavering courage. Leonidas, the Spartan king, truly lived up to this myth, standing against the might of the Persian Empire and playing a pivotal role in saving Greece from conquest. Born around 540 BCE in Sparta, Leonidas was the son of King Anaxandrides. At this time, Greece was a mosaic of city-states, with Sparta and Athens being the most powerful. For Greeks, military service was a fundamental aspect of citizenship, obligatory from age 20 to 45. To prepare for this life, boys across the city-states entered military training camps. However, Sparta's system, known as the agoge, was uniquely rigorous, beginning at age 7. Unlike his firstborn half-brother, Cleomenes I, who was groomed for kingship, Leonidas was the third son. This meant he was subject to the full, arduous regimen of the agoge, destined to become a Spartan warrior rather than an immediate heir to the throne. From age 7 to 12, Leonidas and his peers trained under the watchful eye of a paidonomos, or herder of boys, a highly respected Spartan who enforced discipline with the help of whip-wielding youths. The boys were divided into bands, led by the strongest fighter, and subjected to a deliberately harsh lifestyle. They went barefoot year-round to enhance agility, wore only one cloak regardless of season to build endurance, and received strictly rationed food. The emphasis was on creating lean, hungry, and resilient fighters, capable of enduring prolonged hardship and even practicing tactical theft to hone foraging skills for military campaigns. Despite their warrior focus, Spartans also cultivated learning, enjoying music, poetry, and dance. At age 12, a Spartan youth transitioned into a more advanced stage of training, joining a band of a dozen peers under an aron or prefect, chosen for his intelligence, battle readiness, and cunning. While unrecorded, it is highly probable that Leonidas, given his royal lineage and future prowess, served as an aron. These younger boys acted as servants, honing their thieving skills to gather essentials like firewood and vegetables. Around this time, they also received mentoring from an Orestes, or admirer, a purely platonic relationship in Sparta focused on the development of the boy's character, contrasting with similar customs in other Greek cities. By 18, designated a meleron, or nearly an aron, his military training intensified further, preparing him for full service. By the age of 20, Spartan society had forged Leonidas into an agile, disciplined, and formidable military machine, brimming with self-confidence and a killer instinct. He was a hoplite warrior, expertly trained in the use of the short iron sword, round shield, and spear, ready to fight in the tight phalanx formation that defined Spartan warfare. It was around this time that Leonidas's father, King Anaxandrides, died, and his half-brother Cleomenes ascended to the throne. Leonidas, meanwhile, continued his life as a Spartan warrior, living with his mess group of 15 men, as was customary for men in their 20s. He also married Gorgo, the daughter of his half-brother Cleomenes, a woman known for her beauty and political astuteness. The reign of Cleomenes was marked by growing alarm over the encroaching Persian Empire. In 491 BCE, in an attempt to prevent a neighboring king from conceding to the Persians, Cleomenes made a controversial move that alienated the Spartan people. He was forced to flee the city, but soon gathered an army in surrounding territories. Upon his return to Sparta, convinced of his insanity, the Spartans had him imprisoned. Leonidas is said to have played a role in this decision. Cleomenes, while guarded by Helot slaves, reportedly convinced one to lend him a dagger, with which he then committed a gruesome form of self-mutilation, leading to his death. Cleomenes' other half-brother, Dorius, who was older than Leonidas, had already met an untimely death in Sicily after failing to establish a colony in Africa, incensed that the throne had bypassed him years earlier. Thus, upon Cleomenes' death in 490 BCE, Leonidas found himself next in line and ascended to the Spartan throne. Immediately upon becoming king, Leonidas was thrust into the heart of the conflict with Persia. For years, the Persians had threatened Greece, and now the situation was critical. Under the command of King Xerxes, the Persian Empire had amassed an enormous force. 1,207 warships, and an estimated 1,700,000 warriors, with the ultimate goal of crushing all Greek resistance. Many Greek cities on the coast of Asia were already under Persian rule, and Xerxes would not tolerate the continued independence of the other Greek city-states, which served as beacons of hope for those subjugated. In stark contrast, the Greek city-states were deeply disunited. Out of over 100, only 31 had agreed to form an alliance against Persia, swearing an oath to fight and punish any cities that defected. Key states like Thessaly and Boeotia had even sided with Persia, leaving a significant portion of Greece without active resistance, right up to the doorstep of Athens. However, Sparta, under Leonidas, had assumed leadership of the resistance, recognized for its moral, political, and military preeminence. The Spartans were resolute; they would fight, conquer, or die. The alliance allowed Leonidas to muster approximately 60,000 men. Xerxes believed his overwhelming numbers guaranteed victory, pursuing a strategy of keeping his naval fleet and infantry closely connected. His infantry marched along the shore, and a canal was even dug through Mount Athos to allow ships to maintain proximity to the inland army. By August 18, 480 BCE, Xerxes had overrun Macedonia and Thessaly, bringing his army to Thermopylae, a narrow pass between Thessaly and the Aegean Sea. Leonidas knew that a direct confrontation with the entire Persian army on an open field was unwinnable. His initial strategic intention was to withdraw to a narrow strip of land, merely a mile and a half long, where the Peloponnesian Peninsula joined Attica. Here, his men could build a defensive wall and engage Xerxes' army. However, this plan would leave Athens completely exposed. Reluctantly, Leonidas agreed to take a smaller force to Thermopylae to engage the Persians at the narrowest point of the pass. For this critical mission, Leonidas would personally lead 300 Spartans. This number was manageable for an elite task force and held symbolic and practical significance in Sparta, as it was the fixed size of the royal bodyguard known as the hippies. These cavalrymen, despite serving as infantry, were selected from among the youngest adult citizen year classes, ages 20 to 29, through an intense competition, positioned in the dead center of the hoplite phalanx where the king commanded. Leonidas's Thermopylae advance guard, however, had an additional crucial criterion: each of the chosen 300 must have a living son. This ensured that the family name would be carried on, creating an elite within an elite, whose heirs would be inspired to emulate their father's heroic sacrifice. In addition to the Spartans, Leonidas brought about 4,000 Peloponnesians and approximately 1,000 non-combatant Helots, making it clear that the 300 Spartans were, in effect, a suicide squad. The pass at Thermopylae featured a flat plain where the Persians encamped, with the mountain pass itself only 6 feet wide at certain points. At a wider section of 50 feet, the Spartans set about repairing and reinforcing an existing wall, transforming it into a formidable defensive position. Xerxes' vast forces arrived at the pass's western end, but a delay of 3 or 4 days occurred before he launched his assault. During this lull, Xerxes reportedly sent a message to Leonidas, demanding the Spartans surrender their arms. The Spartan king's defiant reply, in just 2 words, was, "Molon labe, come and get them yourself." It was also during this pre-battle pause that Persian reconnaissance reported strange behavior among the Spartans. Far from being anxious, the Greek warriors appeared supremely at ease, bathing, braiding one another's hair, and even dancing. The Persians initially interpreted this as fear-induced madness, until a traitorous Greek informed Xerxes that the Spartans were not mad. These were the actions of proud heroes preparing for their final life-and-death struggle. The Persian king first deployed the Medes, a force of about 2,000, but these forces, lacking helmets and greaves and equipped with wicker shields, were no match for the Spartans. In the confined space of the pass, the Medes' numerical superiority was nullified. When they unleashed a hail of arrows, the Spartans collectively lifted their shields overhead, forming a defensive roof. The Medes and the subsequent waves of Persian troops did their utmost under Xerxes' scrutinizing gaze, but they suffered heavy losses. Xerxes himself reportedly leapt from his specially constructed throne in horror on 3 occasions, appalled by the carnage inflicted upon his best men. From behind the protection of the refurbished Phaeacian wall, Leonidas's men resisted by fighting in relays, a clever tactic that maximized the efficient output of their limited resources and energy. Leonidas also executed a series of feigned retreats, followed by sudden reversals, leading to murderous onslaughts against their overconfident and disorganized pursuers. Eventually, towards the end of the first day, Xerxes had no choice but to send in his elite royal bodyguard, the 10,000 immortals, under the command of Hydarnes. But once again, their attack was futile, coming at the cost of serious casualties. The gore and bloodshed in the narrow pass were overwhelming, with piles of quickly rotting corpses, swarming flies, and a palpable stench. The battle raged into a second day, and still, Xerxes could not achieve a breakthrough. By this point, an estimated 20,000 Persians had fallen to the Greek resistance, creating a demoralizing effect on the remaining Persian army, who questioned why they couldn't overcome these few rebels. With his frustration at a boiling point, Xerxes finally received his decisive advantage, not through military might, but through betrayal. A Greek turncoat named Ephialtes from Malis, intimately familiar with the local mountain paths, approached Xerxes. He revealed an alternative route through the mountains that would allow the Persians to bypass the Greek defensive position. Ephialtes offered to guide as many as 10,000 Persian troops through this path by night to outflank the Spartans. Although the Spartans knew of this route, they were unaware that Xerxes had discovered it. Xerxes entrusted this special mission to members of the Royal Guard of Immortals. Led by Ephialtes, they set out silently at nightfall, aided by a full moon. After a heroic climb through the Anopeia mountain range, reaching up to 1,000 meters, they easily overwhelmed and bypassed the 1,000 Phocians posted by Leonidas to guard the path. These troops were ill-prepared and taken completely by surprise. Leonidas has often been blamed for not more strongly reinforcing the Anopeia path. By the morning of day 3 of the conflict, the Persians had outflanked the Greeks, placing Leonidas in a pincer grip, caught from both front and rear. Recognizing the hopelessness of the situation, Leonidas gathered his forces and ordered all troops, except the Spartans, to make their escape. Their cities would need them to fight another day, but the Spartans were to make their last stand there at Thermopylae. All melted away, except for a group of about 400 from Thespiae, who declared they would die with the Spartans. The Greeks made their final stand mostly outside the middle gate wall, enabling them to engage directly with the oncoming enemy. Leonidas demonstrated his true Spartan spirit with the words he allegedly spoke to his men before their final meal. "This evening we shall dine in Hades." The Spartans sold their lives at a heavy cost. The Persian losses at the beginning of day 3 were reportedly even heavier than those sustained on the previous 2 days. The Greeks, despite their depleted numbers, repeatedly drove the Persians back. Then, inevitably, the 10,000 Persian royal guard of immortals emerged from the rear. Leonidas fought and died like a man possessed. When his sword shattered after delivering too many death blows, he resorted to using his hands and mouth to inflict injury upon the enemy. The exact manner of his death remains unrecorded, but we know that as soon as he fell, the Persians tried to drag his body away. Seeing this, the Spartans valiantly fought to reclaim their king's body, which was dragged back and forth 4 times before the remnant of the Spartan defenders finally secured it, forming a defensive circle around their fallen leader. In this position, with their spears and lances broken, their bodies battered and bloodied, and their dead king in their midst, the Spartans resorted to throwing rocks at the surrounding Persian forces. Finally, a massive hail of arrows descended, and the last Spartans were cut down. Perhaps the greatest testament to the effectiveness of Leonidas's heroic defense against the Persians was the treatment of his corpse by Xerxes. The Spartan king was decapitated and his body was crucified. Xerxes then attempted to conceal the true number of casualties his men had suffered. However, the monumental defense by the Spartans could not be hidden from history. The deaths of Leonidas and his fellow Spartans significantly lifted Greek morale. The vital time that the Spartans had held up the Persian advance allowed the Athenian Greek fleet to inflict devastating blows on the Persian navy, ultimately leading to the defeat of the Persian threat. Thus, by giving his life so dearly at Thermopylae, Leonidas became the savior of his people.